From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. The campaign caravan of presidential candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in Brazil was attacked once again on Tuesday night. 3 shots were fired at the buses in the convoy, although no one was injured. The attack occurred as the buses were traveling between towns in the south of the country. Party leader Jelisi Hoffman said 2 shots hit a bus carrying reporters following Lula's presidential campaign tour, and a 3rd shot hit another vehicle. The bus carrying Lula was the only one that was not hit.
People are scared, and with good reason. We think this is something unheard of. We never expected this level of violence. The violence against the caravan has increased. We have alerted authorities.
Latin American leaders have expressed outrage against the violent attacks of Lula's campaign tour. They also reaffirmed their support and solidarity towards him. Former Argentinian President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner tweeted, "Since political and judicial persecution is not enough for them, neither is the media campaign against him. Now they turn to violence. Power to Lula." And the former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa also took to Twitter, saying, our solidarity with Lula and his caravan for peace, joy and victory that has just been attacked by gunfire by those who cannot defeat him in the polls. Our correspondent Andre Vieira is following Lula's caravan and has the latest from the campaign trail.
We are following the caravan of former president and presidential candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, now in the south of the country. After the attack against Lula's campaign's caravan, the convoy has reached the city of Curitiba, where the presidential candidate will take part in the last rally of this leg of the tour. Right now, the Workers' Party is asking the government to guarantee their safety as they travel around the country. Since the tour started, the state hasn't guaranteed the safety of Lula or his campaign team. They have been attacked with stones, eggs, and now gunfire. The caravan hasn't been escorted. The Workers' Party has denounced these aggressions, but there has been no response from authorities, who have seen these events happen, but haven't done anything. We will keep you informed as events unfold.
We thank Andre Vieira for that report. Also in Brazil, President Michel Temer on Tuesday released $360 million in public funding to facilitate the military takeover in Rio de Janeiro state amidst escalating gang violence. The president has named General Walter Braga Neto to lead the federal offensive in the state. The rate of crime, particularly theft and homicides, has surged in Rio in recent years. The intervention gives Neto command over all the public security forces in Rio de Janeiro state, including the prison system. After signing the decree, the president took to Twitter to declare, "We are going to win this battle against organized crime." In Ecuador, there are calls for the military to step up after a string of events near the border with Colombia. The government has confirmed that a team of journalists was kidnapped in the area. Now, this follows a series of bomb attacks in the province of Esmeraldas. Denise Herrera takes a look at the growing instability at the Ecuadorian border.
The problems on Ecuador's borders are getting worse. After several attacks, the Minister of the Interior has confirmed the kidnapping of 2 journalists and their driver, working for the newspaper El Comercio, and he announced new security measures in the region.
The President has ordered a meeting of the State Security Council, our country's highest security body. He has also ordered the police and armed forces to stop the circulation of anyone who is not a resident in the region. We call on the press and social media users to act responsibly in their use of information about the situation.
The minister said the journalists went missing early on Monday. He said they passed a military checkpoint and were warned about the danger of traveling in the region.
We cannot give more details because there is an investigation underway, as well as an operation to secure the safe return of the citizens.
In his weekly address, President Lenin Moreno insisted Ecuador will remain a peaceful country and he will do what was needed to protect the border. After these kidnappings and several bomb attacks in the region, some voices in Ecuador are calling for a U.S. military presence on Ecuadorian territory. Denise Herrera, teleSUR, Quito, Ecuador.
And vigils were held on Tuesday in the main Ecuadorian cities to ask for the release of the two journalists and their driver. Over 200 Ecuadorian journalists have signed a petition urging the government to guarantee the safety of the journalists and asking the kidnappers to release their colleagues. The manifesto was given to the Ecuadorian Vice President, Maria Alejandra Vicuña, who attended the vigil in Quito.
We
need the state, our media outlets, and the citizens to support us. We need to understand that violence is rising, a kind of violence that we thought was far away, but it's not. It's a violence that's hitting our country and the population, but more particularly those who have the duty to go there, where the violence is happening, to tell the story.
And in another violent incident in Ecuador, the head of the women's prison in the coastal city of Guayaquil has been assassinated. 46-year-old Gaviz Glenda Moreno was shot multiple times on Tuesday. The attack happened while she was traveling with her driver in a white pickup truck. Authorities say she was trailed by a motorcycle from the time she left the prison. Local media reports say at least 8 shots were fired. Police say this was a targeted attack and they are investigating the case. During the last day of hearings at the International Court of Justice in The Hague, Chilean President Sebastián Piñera insisted his country will not negotiate sea access with Bolivia. Chile defended the validity of the 1904 treaty, in which Bolivia accepted the loss of 400 kilometers of coastline. The International Court of Justice will now deliberate, but its verdict may only come at the end of the year.
The 1904 treaty was ratified. It continues to be enforced, and it has to be strictly followed by its signatory countries, Chile and Bolivia. And so, there are no outstanding border issues between our two nations. In this trial, at the International Court of Justice in The Hague, our territory, the sea, and our national sovereignty are not at stake, as this court already ruled out in September of 2015.
Time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Legal experts have said Peru's prosecutor's office now has enough evidence to request a preventative detention order against Pedro Pablo Kuczynski that would prevent the former Peruvian president from fleeing the country to escape legal proceedings.
As soon as former President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski left the presidential palace, he was under investigation for several corruption cases. The prosecutor's office has seized 3 private properties owned by Kuczynski in Lima, and the judiciary has banned him from leaving the country for 18 months. New information has complicated the legal situation of Kuczynski. For example, he confirmed he left the administrative board of his company, Westfield, in 2005 when he was appointed as Minister of Economy. However, the testimony of Gerardo Sepulveda, a former business associate, appears to refute this claim, as reported by journalist Cesar Romero.
What it proves is that he never left Westfield. He remained with them all of these years. When he was Minister of State, he continued hiring and making new contracts with Odebrecht. There could even be other companies involved.
According to former anti-corruption prosecutor Catherine Empuero, the prosecutor's office has many legal elements to request a preventative detention order against Kuczynski, since he would have had a part to play in the irregular contracts with the Odebrecht company, where bribe payments to former President Alejandro Toledo have already been proven.
Authorities warned about these companies, which wouldn't be able to legally compete in order to build the interoceanic highway. However, under Pedro Pablo Kuczynski's administration, they ignored these warnings, signed the contract, and ignored the regulatory systems.
These are not the only corruption cases linked to the former Peruvian president. He will be investigated for allegedly receiving more than $200,000 from Odebrecht for his electoral campaign, as well as accusations of attempting to buy congressional votes to avoid impeachment.
Peru's President Martin Vizcarra is leaving it to his top diplomats to decide whether to ban Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from the Summit of the Americas. Last month, Peru's former president Pedro Pablo Kuczynski said Maduro was not welcome at the regional summit taking place in April. Although Maduro vowed to attend, Vizcarra said he will support the decision of the Foreign Affairs Ministry.
Decisions were taken not only by Peru as a country, but also by various countries, members of the OAS. In that sense, we will let the specialized entity, which is the Foreign Ministry, give the recommendation in this case.
In Argentina, thousands of public sector workers went on a 24-hour strike again on Tuesday night, rejecting a salary adjustment decreed by the governor in the southern province of Chubut. Protesters marched towards Governor Mariano Arcione's official residence. They blame his administration for not being able to fairly distribute the budget. Public sector workers also reject the stepped payment proposed by the Chubut provincial government. Also in Argentina, a former judge during the former dictatorship is due to be prosecuted for alleged crimes against humanity. Juan Carlos Caballero Vidal was a judge in the northern city of San Juan during the military dictatorship that ruled Argentina from 1976 to 1983. He's accused of deliberately turning a blind eye to the kidnapping and torture of Hector Civinelli and the killing of Angel Jose Alberto Carvajal, thereby providing impunity to the direct perpetrators of those crimes. Paraguayan presidential candidate Efrain Alegre of the opposition Alliance Ganar has signed an agreement with the public university students promising to guarantee quality free education.
According to opposition presidential candidate Efrain Alegre, higher education remains an obstacle for many young people with regards to their career aspirations. He has stated that an annual investment of $30 million is needed to deliver quality-free education in public universities.
We want to give university students good free education. We must remove all the tariffs because they just keep people away from education.
University leaders have criticized the attitude of conservative political groups, saying that they don't care about dialogues with student organizations.
At least one side is listening, so they can develop plans and propose things to work with the education sector. But the other one has no idea of what's going on with education. They don't even have suggestions to improve it.
According to the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, CEPAL, Paraguay invests the least in education out of the whole region. Students believe the attitude of the ruling right-wing Colorado Party and its candidates will not find solutions for education problems.
We have two different kinds of candidates. One wants to listen to the education sector, and the other following someone who tells them what to do and not to do. They don't want to listen.
Official data shows that only 7 out of 100 Paraguayans have access to higher education. Urgent development of public policies is needed to ensure the country has a wealth of young professionals who can guide the country's future.
Chilean President Sebastián Piñera is using anti-terrorism laws to target Mapuche indigenous activists who are demanding their lands back. Piñera approved a reform in the law which would allow police to use force and to detain demonstrators for decades. Mapuche activists have been demanding the return of their land in Biobío and Araucania, which was sold to businesses. They have also complained that the region is becoming increasingly militarized. Haitian President Jovenel Moïse has sworn in members of the High Military Command that it's the new reconstructed National Army. The Caribbean nation has not had a military since 1995, when former President Jean-Bouchard Aristide disbanded the army after returning to power following a coup. President Moïse has pledged to restore citizens' trust in the state institution, pledging that the army will respect the rule of law and strive to serve the people. They will also be tasked with cybersecurity and efforts to combat climate change. Jamaica has extended the state of emergency in the St. Catherine North area in a bid to quell criminal activity. The measure was introduced in mid-March after 48 people were killed in under 3 months. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the government will detail its crime plan soon. He says the plan must have bipartisan backing and it must give authorities enhanced powers in the name of national security. A survey shows a majority of Jamaicans would support the temporary suspension of citizens' rights and the acceptance of military rule just to curtail crime. Just days after Antigua and Barbuda's general election, where the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, the ABLP, defeated the United Progressive Party, the UPP, the leader of the UPP, Harold Lavelle, says he is not opposed to a merger with the breakaway party, the Democratic National Alliance. The DNA was formed after Joan Messiah left UPP last year. Lavelle did not mention if he had already made an official approach to the DNA, and Messiah hasn't said if she would be willing to go back to the party she left. The damage from the oil spill in Colombia's Santander province is getting worse. Authorities say almost 2,500 tropical species were wiped out. 70 families in the region have also been treated for medical complications after the spill contaminated their crops and water supply. The state firm Ecopetrol left 24,000 barrels of oil in the Lezama River a month ago. The government says they will be held accountable. And Mexico will start a massive cleanup of the Tijuana region next week. The government has pledged more than $4 million to remove wastewater and garbage. It will also renovate pumping stations and emergency generators. The project will stop the flow of sewage into the Pacific Ocean. The initiative was sparked after 2 Californian cities sued Mexico for the contamination from the Tijuana River. Time now for another short break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has pledged to dismantle the country's nuclear program. His comments were made to Chinese President Xi Jinping during a 4-day visit that was kept secret until the last day. The trip comes ahead of a landmark summit between North Korea, South Korea, and the United States. China has played a central role in diplomatic relations with North Korea. Commentators say she could be key in mediating the upcoming meetings.
I must say, China and North Korea have a tradition of high-level mutual visits. High-level contacts have always played the most important role in leading and promoting the development of China-North Korea relations. During this visit, General Secretary Xi Jinping pointed out explicitly that he is willing to maintain frequent contacts with Chairman Kim Jong-un through mutual visits, by sending each other's special envoys, exchanging letters, and other means.
Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines around the world.
Ethiopia's ruling coalition has elected Abiy Ahmed as its new leader, paving the way for him to be the next prime minister. Ahmed is of Oromo descent, the country's largest ethnic group, who have been leading anti-government protests since 2015. Ahmed will take over from Hailemariam Desalegn as prime minister, who resigned last month over the mass protests. Just weeks before the general election in Malaysia, Prime Minister Najib Razak has proposed to redraw the voting map of the country. A bill has been placed in the parliament to implement the new proposal. Over 200 demonstrators protested against the new bill. The opposition say it's an attempt to overhaul seats along racial lines. The bill comes just 2 days after the government introduced another bill banning fake news. A member of the Russian State Duma, Sergei Zelensky, has said that the expulsion of Russian diplomats over the Skripal poisoning case is a plot by the West to demonize Russia. His reaction comes after more than 130 Russian envoys were expelled from 24 countries over Britain's allegation that Russia was behind a nerve agent attack on the UK soil 3 weeks ago.
Western countries are responsible for escalating tensions. These countries are trying every method to maintain their hegemony and the super profit they once had in the unipolar world. They don't want to admit and accept the fact that the world has changed.
Australian cricket captain Steve Smith and vice captain David Warner have been banned for 12 months in a ball tampering scandal. Another player, Cameron Bancroft, was banned for 9 months. Bancroft was caught on camera cheating during a match in South Africa on Saturday. He used sandpaper to damage the ball. However, he and Captain Smith then misled the public, saying it was just yellow tape. Both have been barred from captaining for 2 years. Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has said the scandal has bitterly disappointed the whole nation.
On June 14, 2017, Grenfell Tower, a 24-story apartment block in West London, caught fire. According to official figures, 72 people died in the blaze. More than 9 months since the tragedy, the local community continued to organize in the fight for justice. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, has more.
On the same night that Grenfell Tower went up in flames, killing at least 72 people, musician and community leader Niles Hailstones was preparing for an event marking 40 years since the release of Marley's Exodus album. He had the keys to Bay 56 in Acklam Village, West London, a short walk away.
And the catalyst for us being here now is actually when Grenfell happened, because we moved into this bay on the 14th of June. Because donations were being left on the street, they were being stolen and taken out of the area by different bodies, and we decided on the day to use this building to store the donations in and to also be able to assist the community in other ways.
The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to adequate housing has said the UK government may have failed to comply with its international human rights obligations over the Grenfell Tower fire. More than 9 months since the fire, Niles and many others in the community are also very critical of the government's response. But they see hope in how the community has come together.
From the 14th of June, a lot of people woke up to what was going on. A lot of people, the majority of people genuinely came out just, or spontaneous to see whatever they could do to help. That initial energy was an amazing thing, it was a beautiful thing to see.
The coming together of the local community in the face of such a brutal tragedy has also encouraged relatives of some of the people who died to demand change.
Well, I just ask for people to treat people like human beings and have some compassion and empathy, so that this just cover-up job and make excuses. I think policies, social policies, need to be reviewed.
There is widespread frustration and anger amongst the local community towards the British government and local authorities for the way in which they have responded to what people feel was an entirely preventable tragedy.
There's a phrase that I think encapsulates what led to Grenfell, and it's callous indifference. Callous indifference is the way that neoliberalism unpeoples individuals and renders them a statistic on a spreadsheet at best, and something that can be moved, displaced, decanted, moved out of their place of residency.
The communities that live in the shadow of Grenfell Tower have shown a commitment to organise and demand answers in the face of a seeming indifference by the UK government and local authorities. Their search for justice and the truth continues. Pablo Navarrete, teleSUR, London.
So that story brought us to the end of this newscast, but for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For teleSUR English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you so much for watching.